ex-libris de Goa é sem dúvida a cidade de Old Goa, o que nos leva imediatamente a pensar que a presença da cultura portuguesa em Goa, e que durou cerca de 451 anos, teve de facto uma marca muito importante na cultura goesa. Mas se olharmos com mais atenção, podemos descobrir que muitos dos monumentos e igrejas em Old Goa foram construídos de facto durante o Império Espanhol, durante o domínio filipino, entre 1580 e 1640. No episódio anterior, e que podem ver no endereço que deve estar agora a passar em rodapé, tentámos descobrir o símbolo, o ícone que representa Old Goa. Neste episódio vamos tentar dar-vos uma imagem do que foi Old Goa antes da chegada dos portugueses. Vivek, do you see Old Goa like the symbol of Portugal in Goa?
No, I don't. Old Goa to me is one of the first great crucibles of globalization. It is the first time that the East and in the case of certainly India, but also the rest of Asia, encountered a colonial experience from Europe. It's also the first time that the Europeans encountered properly, scientifically, the Indian subcontinent and the rest of Asia. And what happened here was the opening up of kind of a pipeline between Europe and the Far East, as well as all of the colonial possessions of the Portuguese. So here you had kind of a crucible, a great mixing pot, one of the first that took place. That's my feeling about it.
And can you give me an example?
Well, one of the things that we can talk about is architecture, right? I mean, one of the examples we have right here of the Church of St. Cajetan is a building which kind of defies this idea that this was a Portuguese or an exclusively Portuguese colonial episode. You have a church which is neo-Roman, Corinthian elements, built by Italians actually, the Theatines, who came to Goa kind of by accident. And it also contains a mystery inside which is clearly Hindu, or has some relevance to Hinduism or the Hindu past of this territory. So here you have an example, a perfect example to me of something which is much broader, much more complicated than merely something that can be looked at through the Portuguese prism.
What exactly are these Hindu elements that you're talking about?
Well, inside the church there is a mystery. The church itself is built on a Greek cross plan, so there is a center point, and the center point happens to be over a hidden well. And this is something which clearly is not something that's very common in church architecture, but in a temple context is actually very common, in fact, to have water or the temple to be built around a water source or near a water source. So there is certainly a mystery here which has not been solved, and I think that most likely it's some form of a nod to local circumstances or to local belief or tradition.
Do you think that the Indian artists also had any word on construction of these churches?
There's lots of evidence. You can particularly see it strongly in the artworks and the carvings, where many of these were rendered by local craftsmen. For example, you have scenes which have a curious kind of fusion between European and Indian art. So these kinds of charming episodic examples show that there were a huge number of Indian craftsmen working here.
Mas estes pequenos detalhes subtis de um passado pré-português, hindu e muçulmano, muito raramente conseguimos encontrá-los nos mapas e nos guias turísticos que se encontram disponíveis em Goa. O que encontramos sim são capelas, igrejas, basílicas em grande profusão. A quantidade de cruzes e igrejas que podemos encontrar por metro quadrado aqui em Goa é, no mínimo, podemos dizer, invulgar. Mas de todos os símbolos cristãos e especificamente católicos, aquele que podemos encontrar ao virar todas as esquinas é a figura de São Francisco Xavier. Encontramos o seu nome e imagem, obviamente, em igrejas, mas também em escolas, em lojas, em restaurantes, eu sei lá. Mas há outras marcas em Old Goa. E por isso viemos aqui ao Museu de Arte Cristã descobrir esses outros ícones de outras culturas que passaram aqui por Old Goa.
We have a very interesting piece here in the museum which is called Naga. And it's called the Naga why? Because if you look at the body of this decorative element, it's in the shape of a snake. The coiled lower part of the body is like that of a snake. Now Nagas or snakes for Hindu divinities are Hindu divinities worshipped by Hindus. But they began to feature in the church altars from the time the Portuguese came here to India and set up their churches in Goa. These began to feature in the main altars of churches. So here you have the first element of Indian element in Christian art right before you, the Nagas. Now these ones here are seen with those breasts. They could have been the female counterpart of the Naga, and they are called Naginas. Here you have a reliquary of Saint Margaret of Antioquia. But this piece here looks very Indian, told to us by many of our visitors who come here and visit. They say, this looks like a Gautam Buddha. So I said, why? No, because of the way it is, the posture, and also because of the way the hair is stylized. You know, those little curls in the hair are like that of snails. And it is believed that when Gautam Buddha, who was the main person to start the religion Buddhism, when he was attaining nirvana, seated under a tree which is called the Bodhi tree, when he was attaining nirvana, snails are believed to have made a sort of a cap on his head. So what you see here, the way the hair of this saint is stylized is like that of snails. So again, an Indian element in Christian art.
And what is this animal here?
Looks like a dragon. And why a dragon? Because she was locked in a room and there were dragons trying to tempt her to give up on her faith of Christianity. But she managed to slay the dragon. But later on, of course, she herself was killed by the pagans who were not accepting that she was Christian. So Saint Margaret is a martyr saint, and here she's represented with one of her iconographic representations of a dragon.
Interesting.
In Goa's churches, we have many processional banners that we use at the time of the feast of saints. Like in this case, this is a processional banner of Saint Joseph. Very curiously, you see work on textile being done with ivory. It's very unusual. I'm given to believe that it's only in Goa that you see ivory work on textile. Here we have Jesus, the Good Shepherd. This is carved out of one piece of ivory, just one single piece of ivory. Again, there are very strong Indian elements. Like you can look at this and it connects you to something Indian, like maybe a Krishna who's sitting in a thinking position while he's taking care of his herd. Now in this case, it is Jesus looking after the sheep, seated on the top, and then you have a fountain of life pouring out from there, and you have a penitent saint who is praying. Again, an image of Jesus, very Indian. Why? Again, because of the way the hair is stylized, and also because of the little belly that's jutting out. Again, you look at the images of Gautam Buddha, you have a slight belly protruding out. Again, very Indian element of a little belly coming out. This is the museum's most unique piece that we have here, a pelican monstrance cum tabernacle. A monstrance is a place where you would keep the Blessed Sacrament or the host for display and adoration of the public. And a tabernacle is where you'll keep the other host for storing. You can't see it from here because it's in the behind of the little globe that, the big globe that we have there. Now, why pelican? Why a tabernacle and monstrance in the shape of a pelican? Now, it's believed that a pelican in times of famine opens up her chest and feeds her baby pelicans. This is very similar to what Christ did for mankind by dying on the cross and saving the world. So you see the pelican on the world. Here we have a set of 3 crucifixes. A very strange thing that you'll notice here is that you have a sun god above that of the Christ who's crucified. 3 sun gods. Yeah. Now, sun gods are worshipped in different religions, including Hinduism. So maybe this could have been an Indian influence on Christian art, where you have the sun gods. Also, because they are 3, they could be the 3 main gods of the Hindus: the Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And the way the sun gods' features are, they're very Indian again. So this could very well be a very Indian representation in Christian art.
And who is this saint here?
This is a saint called Saint Ursula. She was a martyr saint. How do we identify a martyr saint? By an arrow that you see right there, an arrow. Iconographic representations of saints. Martyr saints are arrows and palm fronds. So you see a palm frond on the table where she rests her hand. She was attacked by a group of pagans, and they were killed with arrows. She and the maidens who were accompanying her, who were actually 11 virgins. But as the story went down the years, what was documented was 11 as in 11 in Roman numbers, .m.v, which was meant to be 11 or martyrish virgenis, but misread by the many over the years, over the centuries, as 11,000 virgins. So that's how the misinterpretation of 11,000 virgins. And it's strange because in Europe, every church claims to have the skull of the 11,000 virgins, but actually there are only 11 virgins. This particular one is an ivory image of Our Lady. If you look very closely, she's draped in a sari and standing on a crescent, and below that there's a lotus. So the Indian element is very, very strong in this image of Our Lady. Goa's very popular saint is Saint Francis Xavier, and there are lots of miracles that are attributed to this saint. Usually we identify Saint Francis Xavier with a cross, and there is a story about the crab and the cross which is connected to his life. And this object here is just that, the crab and the cross, with a little plaque right down, which is an altar card. Francis Xavier was once traveling from Ambonia to Ceylon, and the seas were very rough, so he put down his cross in the water, in the sea, to calm down the sea, and in the bargain he loses his cross. So he's so very distressed that he reaches the shore and he's walking and very disappointed that he's lost his cross. And then he sees this crab coming towards him with his cross. Saint Francis Xavier, when he came down to Goa, he was, since he was a missionary, he was here to convert people and the non-Christians to Christianity. And he thought a very good way of doing it was to connect to what people already knew and to teach them in a way that they already were familiar with. So he took up themes like saints and narrated stories to them about saints, about their lives, about the Virgin Mary. And there was already an earlier time when people were worshipping Mother Goddess, so they could identify the Virgin Mary with the Virgin Mary. Also, Balkrishna, Infant Jesus. These were themes that they could identify with while the conversion took place. So he used themes like this. He also would be preaching on this very hill, this hill which is called Mont Santo. He would be coming up here with a bell, and all the children would follow him, and they would sit there on top where we have now the chapel of the Nosso Senhor do Rosario, and he would be having his catechism classes there with all the children. So this was how the mission activities actually took place. We have a very beautiful piece of the infant Jesus sleeping in a bed, a silver bed. This infant Jesus looks very rich because he's with a lot of jewels and anklets and bracelets and a necklace, reminding all our visitors who visit the museum of Krishna, because you usually see Krishna with anklets and bracelets. Now, we have a tradition in Goa in which a newly married bride is given an infant Jesus in ivory by her mother in the hope that she would bear a child soon. This is one tradition. Also, when we have our cribs at Christmas time, the senior most member of the family will bring out their infant Jesus from their treasure boxes and put it in the crib. So the Indians or the Hindus took up to this devotion to infant Jesus in a very easy manner because they were already having a devotion for Balkrishna. So it was not difficult to incorporate infant Jesus in their religious beliefs.
We are in Old Goa right now. This place is called as Ella, or also known as Brahmapuri. It was a seat of learning during the Vijayanagar period, that is when Prince Harihar came over Goa, he took over Goa. His minister is supposed to have built a lot of temples. And the tank, what you can see over there, is called as Madhav Tirth. It was built by him, and it was also named after him. And there's a legend which is very famous, which is told about this place, about this tank is, there's a tunnel inside, and it is said that if you walk across the tunnel, it leads to God. Nobody has tried walking so far, but it is said that if you have so much of patience in you, you follow the tunnel and you will see God. This is the beginning of the Rajbeed, which was connecting the port, that's the port wall, to Old Goa behind. And this is the area from which the Rajbeed began. It was also called as Rajvithi or Rajbeed, it had two names. And those are the relics of the port city. It was established by a Kadam king called as Veer Varma Dev somewhere in the 11th century. And you find relics or vestiges of a port over here. And even in the sea, you'll find a lot of bastions or a lot of walls which are probably used to protect the port city. Somewhere even during the 20th century, you have historians publishing books giving pictures of these relics or the vestiges. And now if you see in the 21st century, if you compare those pictures and to what is left now, there's a lot of difference. And you find most of the locals have taken the stones, quarried away the stones from this port wall and for their personal uses. Similarly, the Rajbeed which is existing today is also ceases to exist for a certain portion because of the local authorities. They have quarried that particular hillock, and if you walk across the Rajbeed, you will find there's a big huge portion which is missing. So the mud has been excavated out and used for some other purposes, for building roads and other structures. So that's a sad thing actually. During the 11th century, it was a very flourishing port city. It was called as Gopak at that time, and this particular area where we are in now was called as Gopak Pattan, because Gopak Pattan refers to the port city of Gopak. This was the second capital of Goa. The first one was at Chandrapur, that is in Chandor, that's in Salset Taluka today. And because of problems of siltation, these Kadam kings moved to this part of Goa. There were a lot of problems in Chandor, the navigation problems, there was silt being accumulated, And again after in the 12th century you find these kings moving to the other side of Goa Valley, that is Old Goa, today's Old Goa, because of siltation problems here again. Today's Goa Valley, it was the capital city of the Kadam dynasty. And the Kadam dynasty had Goa under their control right from the 10th century, and they ruled up till the 14th century. That is, the last Kadam king is supposed to have ruled till 1300 AD. Somewhere after 1300, you find Goa being attacked by the Muslim kings. Slowly you find the kings of Vijayanagar also have an eye on Goa, and in somewhere in 1391 they attack the Konkan province, that is the part of Konkan, and they also plan to establish this city on the other side, because here again those problems they also encountered over here. And you find these kings giving grants to a village called as Brahmapuri, building water tanks, building embankments on the water tanks. And after these Vijayanagars, you find Adil Shah attacking Goa. Idalgaon is basically a corruption of the word Adil Shah or Adil Khan. It is a dynasty, the Adil Shahi dynasty. And Old Goa remains as a city under Adil Shah for quite a long period of time, till the Portuguese attack. Much before the Portuguese could come, Old Goa was a well fortified city, and when Afonso de Albuquerque attacked Goa for the first time, there are records which mention that it was a well fortified city, it had guns. There is a description wherein it is mentioned that there were thousands of people guarding the city, 7,000 to 8,000 people. So by that you can make out that the city was already a bustling city, and when you have so many guards guarding a city with a lot of guns, that means the city had really was of great importance. Some Portuguese chroniclers have also gone to the extent mentioning that there were beautiful temples, nearby mosques, there were marketplaces. We are actually in the moat. There was a huge stream of water flowing here to protect the fortified city, and here you find the fort wall behind me. And now of course it's in a very sorry state of affairs, but probably these are some of the pre-Portuguese remains of the old Goa city. Probably you can say Yusuf Adil Shah fortified it, or Ismail Adil Shah, we don't know. And later on Portuguese also might have developed it further, but these are some of the pre-Portuguese vestiges of the old city when Afonso de Albuquerque took over it. And when Portuguese attacked, they found that the city had already been established. That is why they attacked this part of Goa first, which was a bustling city. And later on, you find them having problems with Ismail Adil Shah. And then finally, after the second attack, he takes it over.
So this was already a capital for
Yes,
the
this was
Adil
already
Shah.
a capital of the Adil Shah of Bijapur, Yusuf Adil Shah, and later on it was taken over by Ismail Adil Shah. Then again Afonso de Albuquerque took it from Ismail Adil Shah, and then you have this old Goa remaining with the Portuguese, the Tiswadi Taluka, the Ilyash Taluka, and the rest part of today's Goa still remained under Adil Shah. And then you have Ismail Adil Shah's successors like Ibrahim Adil Shah I, Ibrahim Adil Shah II, Ali Adil Shah, and all those Adil Shahs ruling over Goa. Subsequently, you have Tiswadi being taken, Ilyash being taken by the Portuguese. After that, you have Salset and Bardes taken. So that is how these three talukas of Goa are called as the Old Conquest or the Vella Conquistas.
Rohit, why did you bring us to this place? It looks a desert, like a forest.
Basically, you are sitting on a highway.
Oh.
And you are sitting on the edge of an highway. So this is a 11th century highway, not a 21st century one. But just compare the 11th century highway, the width of the 11th century and the 21st century highway of Goa, almost the same. And it was built by a 11th century king called Jaikeshi I, who wanted to connect the two capitals, or the upcoming capital of Old Goa that time, Ella or Brahmapuri, to Gopak, the port city, Gopak Pattan. And if you walk across down straight, you reach Old Goa. That's today's Old Goa, the Portuguese Old Goa. And you find the highway is paved, the laterite pavement is still seen, and there are provisions also kept for people to walk on foot. Many historians say that the layer, which is just a raised platform, is for people to walk on foot. And if you just explore this road on either side, you will find mounds of earth or small structures like platforms, stone platforms. So probably they say there was a marketplace and people sold their wares over there. So if you just walk down, you reach Old Goa.
Let's do that. Let's walk down.
And that is the place, if you just, it's a straight way down. If you walk, you still walk ahead, you'll find beautiful laterite pavement.
So this is what you mean by the pavement?
Yes, this portion is little higher than the road, you can see over here. And probably it was for the marketplace, provisions were made for the marketplace. And it is also believed by many historians that it was used by people to walk on foot. So it was a well-planned royal highway at that time. You can anytime compare it to today's highway, hardly any pavements or hardly any footpaths existing. So the 11th century road, it really fascinates you, their planning, the way of their planning, how the shortest distance, how they could connect the two cities, the upcoming city, it didn't take a long route as such.
De facto, quando falamos de Old Goa, dificilmente conseguimos lhe associar uma imagem. Encontramos aqui a presença do colonialismo cristão, a presença muçulmana, a presença hindu, mas que imagem representa Old Goa? Só nos resta convidar-vos a vir aqui e descobrirem por vocês próprios. Mas não se esqueçam de trazer uma garrafa de água bem fresquinha e sapatos confortáveis, porque tem muito que andar. Até daqui a 15 dias.